Hello, gang. I'm back with got really itchy head, sorry. Episode 16 of Herstory, the Catherine the Great edition. Here to tell you that mermaids don't have thigh gaps also. There are two qualities that make one a mermaid. One is that you don't have a thigh gap, and the second is that your hair can cover your nipples, both of which apply to me. So, therefore, I have earned my mermaid stripes. Right, so we are here today, we're gathered here today to talk about Catherine the Great, Russia's longest ruling female leader, empress, overthrower of husband, definitely great. Catherine II, Yekaterina Alexeyevna, born on the 2nd of May 1729 in Stettin, Pomerania, Kingdom of Prussia, now Poland, as Princess Sophie Friederike August von Anhalt-Zerbst-Dornburg. That's a name. Her father, Christian August, came from a German ruling family, and he was a Prussian general. Mum was Joanna Elizabeth of Holstein-Gottorp, a German regent. Sophie was educated by a French governess. She was a tomboy as a child, and she had a fairly uneventful, chilled childhood. Although she was born a princess, her family had very little money. She first met her future husband, the prospective Tsar Peter, soon to be Peter III, at the age of 10, and apparently found him detestable, disliking his pale complexion, fondness for alcohol, and the fact that he played with toy soldiers. She applied herself to learning the Russian language and culture and was really well liked by her mother-in-law, the Empress Elizabeth. It was quite common for a girl to go and live with her mother-in-law and their family before the marriage. That was quite a common thing to do. So yeah, that was quite a common thing to do. So although she was raised Lutheran, Sophie was christened on the 28th of June 1744 by the Russian Orthodox Church. Sorry, I'm really tired today. And christened Yekaterina, or Catherine. The long-planned marriage took place on the 24th of August 1745 in St. Petersburg. Catherine was 16. The newlyweds settled in the palace of Oranienbaum. I think that's how you pronounce it. Both quickly started having affairs with other people. They didn't really like each other very much. Peter took a mistress called Elizabeth Vorontsova, while Catherine had liaisons with Sergei Saldikov, Grigory Orlov, Alexander Vasilchikov, Grigory Potemkin, and others. She became friends with Princess Ekaterina Vorontsova-Dashkova, the sister of Peter's mistress, who introduced her to several powerful political groups that opposed Peter. His temperament was unbearable, and Catherine spent a lot of time in her room hiding away from her husband. After the death of his mother, Empress Elizabeth, on the 5th of January 1762, Peter succeeded the throne as Emperor Peter III, and Catherine became Empress Consort. They moved into the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. The Tsar's eccentricities and policies, including a great admiration for Prussian King Frederick II, alienated his people. He got himself into the 7 Years' War with Prussia, and support from the nobility was fast eroding. In July 1762, barely 6 months after becoming emperor, Peter went on holiday, leaving Catherine alone in St. Petersburg. Big mistake. The next day, Catherine went to the Izmailovsky regiment and delivered a speech asking for protection from her husband. She left with the regiment to go to the, I can't read my own writing, Semenovsky barracks, where the clergy were waiting to ordain her as the sole occupant of the Russian throne. Overnight, boom. She had her husband arrested, forced him to sign a document of abdication, leaving no one to dispute her accession to the throne. Bish, bash, bosh. Catherine's the boss. On 17th of July, 1762, 8 days after the coup, Peter III died at... Sorry, postman. Get dogs, they said. It'll be fun, they said. Sorry. So on the 17th of July, 1762, 8 days after the coup, Peter III died at Ropsha at the hands of Grigory Orlov's younger brother, Alexei. Apparently, Catherine knew nothing about the assassination. I'll leave that up to your imagination as to whether you think that's true. Catherine was crowned at the Assumption Cathedral in Moscow on the 22nd of September, 1762. It was for her that the imperial crown of Russia was created, containing almost 5,000 diamonds and weighing 2.3 kilograms. That's freaking insane. During her reign, Catherine extended the Russian borders by some 200,000 square miles, absorbing Ukraine, Belarus, Lithuania, and much of the Ottoman Empire in the south as well. Catherine annexed the Crimea from Ottoman rule in 1783. She acted as a mediator in the War of the Bavarian Succession between Prussia and Austria. She encouraged the migration of Volga German farmers who settled in the Volga River Valley, and they helped to grow wheat, tobacco, rear sheep, and manufacture on a small scale with flour and wool. Catherine was a patron of the arts, literature, and education. The Hermitage Museum, now at the Winter Palace, began as Catherine's personal collection. She wrote comedies, fiction, and memoirs, and surrounded herself with scientists, economists, and the likes of Voltaire and Diderot. She was a firm believer in Enlightenment thinking. She was also friends with Vigée Lebrun, Marie Antoinette's court painter. She spent a great portion of her reign trying to make education accessible for all and to establish a police force, which is quite forward-thinking. Yes. Again, have dogs, they said. I don't know why all the delivery men are coming when I try and do my video. That's just obviously the way it's going to be. On the 5th of August, 1786, the Russian Statute of National Education was passed. Catherine was personally quite indifferent to religion, so the Toleration of All Faiths Edict of 1773 allowed mosques to be built in Russian territory, which is very accepting considering that she's at war with the Ottomans. By 1786, Catherine excluded all religion and clerical studies from her education programmes. Catherine took many lovers throughout her long reign, around 22, we think, often elevating them to high social positions, which came in handy when anyone got any ideas about revolting. Once she was done with them, she gave them lands, estates, serfs, and a very large pension. The last of her lovers, Prince Zubov, was 40 years her junior. Well done, Catherine. Her sexual independence led to many of the legends surrounding her. For example, the legend that she liked to collect erotic furniture. She was a nymphomaniac and then she died having sex with a horse. Not true. They also said she had an erotic cabinet with fold-out table with penises for legs. The walls were covered in erotic art, statues of naked men and women inside, vulvas were carved into it, and some erotic artifacts from Pompeii were kept inside it. None of which is true. But hey, that's what you get for being a sexually liberated woman in the 1700s. Gregory Potemkin was her main squeeze. There's absolutely no doubt about it, despite all of her lovers. He's her main squeeze. And rumours that they secretly married were rife, but there's nothing to back this up at all. Catherine had had 2 children during her relationship with Peter, Paul Petrovich in 1754 and Anna Petrovna in 1757. She had at least 1 child by lover Alexei Grigorovich. She had at least 1 child by a lover, Alexei Grigorovich, whose father was Gregory Orlov, and Elizabeth Grigorievna, who came along in 1775, whose father was never acknowledged but may have been Potemkin's child. Catherine's main issues during her reign came from plots to overthrow her and from the serfs of Russia, the peasants of Russia. According to a census taken from 1754 to 1762, Catherine owned 500,000 serfs and 2.8 million belonged to the Russian state. Exactly the way serfdom worked here in England. The nobles owned the serfs who worked their land in exchange for a home and for protection and a little piece of land to call their own and to grow their own crops and keep their animals. The rights of serfs were very limited. A landowner could punish his serfs at his discretion, and under Catherine they actually gained the ability to sentence serfs to hard labour in Siberia, which was a punishment normally reserved for convicted criminals. Catherine, in all of her greatness, didn't like poor people. She introduced a system whereby serfs could appeal if their noble mistreated them or didn't hold up their end of the bargain in terms of protection or providing them with an adequate home to live in. And a manifesto in March 1775 prohibited a freed serf from becoming a serf again. Due to the new education programmes, landowners could also send away their serfs to learn a trade or to go to school. The serfs immediately disliked Catherine upon her ascension because she'd annulled one of Peter's acts that freed serfs belonging to the Orthodox Church. So she has a very up and down relationship with the serfs. I think she kind of threw out acts to appease them, but generally she didn't really like them. Crop failure, food shortages, and an epidemic of plague in 1771 served to push the serfs toward widespread outbreaks of violence and rioting in Pugachev's rebellion of 1774. We'll talk a little bit more about that during Fun Facts. Pugachev and the rebellion ultimately failed and backfired. Catherine was pushed away completely from the idea of serf liberation. Sadly, so they were revolting for rights, and it made her even less inclined to give them to them. Despite Catherine's enlightened ideals, serfs in Russia were generally very unhappy and discontented people. On the 16th of November 1796, Catherine rose early in the morning and had her usual cup of coffee, settled down to her papers. Sometime after 9 a.m, Catherine went to her dressing room and collapsed from a stroke. She was found by her attendants sprawled on the floor with a purple face, breathing shallow and pulse weak. Despite all attempts to revive her, she fell into a coma from which she never recovered. She was given her last rites and died the following evening around 9:45 p.m. The Empress was laid to rest with a gold crown upon her head and clothed in a silver brocade dress. On the 25th of November, the coffin was richly decorated in gold fabric and placed atop an elevated platform at the Grand Gallery's chamber of mourning, where she lay in state, surrounded by the crests of the different areas of Russia and roses for 6 weeks. It was kept lit day and night, and eventually Catherine was buried at St. Peter and Poole Cathedral in St. Petersburg. Seriously, I don't know what it is, but literally all the delivery people in the world right now. So I apologise if the dogs go off. I'm just going to keep going because I'm nearly there. Right, so she was buried at St. Peter and Paul Cathedral in St. Petersburg. Fun facts about Catherine the Great. The royal families of England, Denmark, the Netherlands and Spain are descended from Catherine. Our current Prince Regent, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, is Catherine the Great's 4 times great-grandson. He's her 4 times great-grandmother. There you go. She didn't get along with her son Paul at all. Just before she died, she intended to formally announce that Paul would be excluded from the succession and the crown would go to her eldest grandson Alexander instead. He subsequently became Emperor Alexander I in 1801 after his dad Paul was assassinated 5 years into his reign. Her official title, I love this, I want this for myself, was Her Imperial Majesty the Empress and Autocrat of all the Russias. That's awesome. An upcoming miniseries is about to be released by HBO in autumn, starring Helen Mirren, called Catherine the Great. Very much looking forward to that. Catherine faced down more than a dozen uprisings during her reign. 1773, Pugachev's was the most dangerous to her. Pugachev claimed he was the deposed and dead Peter III and rightful heir to the Russian throne. He had thousands of supporters, a Cossack army behind him, but faced with the might of the Russian army, Pugachev's supporters deserted him and he was captured and publicly executed in January 1775. You don't mess with Catherine the Great. So there we go. That's Catherine the Great. Let me know what you think about her. Catherine, she was pretty great, but her treatment of poor people was not so great. There's a lot more that can be said about Catherine the Great. This is a very short little snippet of Catherine the Great. If you want to learn more, please pick up the Warrior Queens by Antonia Fraser. It has many of the women that we have covered already in here. Boudica is in here. Elizabeth I is in here. Who else is in here? So many. Pretty much every awesome woman ever is in here. Anne Boleyn is in here. Cleopatra is in here. Who else? Yes, Catherine II, the Great, Tsarina of Russia, is in here. It's a great book. It's a really, really good book, and I recommend that you read it. But yes, lots of people that we've already done. Matilda, there she is. Is already in there. So yes, Warrior Queens by Antonia Fraser is a great book to pick up. And somewhere I have a book on the Romanovs. Can't remember who that's by. But that talks about Catherine the Great and the Romanov dynasty that comes as a result of her. So yeah, there we go. Obviously, go over to the Facebook page, the Herstory Girls, and there's going to be a poll, and you can decide who you want the next episode to be about. So you can have a say. It was really, 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 really close. This one, it was 11 votes, and Anne Boleyn won by 1 vote. So I thought I'll do Catherine the Great because the demand is obviously there. So yeah, who are we going to have next? Head on over and vote on the poll. And please do subscribe and give us a comment as to who you would like to see featured on another episode of Herstory. Any places you would particularly like me to go to cover interesting women. I'm going to be going to Florence in November to talk all things Medici, which I'm really looking forward to. Yeah. Just give us a like and a subscribe and all that good stuff. Head over to the Facebook group, page and vote in the poll. I'm really tired. I'm going to have a nap. Thank you for joining me for Herstory episode 16. This is crazy. We're nearly at 20. When did this happen? Thank you for everyone that's followed me along this crazy journey, and long may it continue. Lots of love. Mwah. Always be great.